Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the first webinar in FireSafe Europe's data collection webinar series on learning from international organizations that gather, analyze, and use fire data. My name is Sarah de Biche-Christian. I'm the Public Affairs Officer at FireSafe Europe. FireSafe Europe is a coalition, an alliance of fire experts, firefighters, European associations, international companies, and our mission is very much to improve fire safety in buildings for people. We have two speakers today, Dr. Laurie Moore-Morel from the International Public Safety Data Institute. Laurie is a senior executive with the International Association of Firefighters. She's considered an expert in emergency response, system evaluation, data collection and analysis, cost and benefits analysis, strategic planning, advocacy, consensus building, and policy development and implementation. She has been instrumental in producing landmark reports and other tools to improve residential and high-rise fire ground operations, community risk assessment, fire and emergency medical services, resource deployment, and big data analytics. All of that to help drive executive decision-making. We also have Birgitte Messerschmidt with us today. She holds the position of Director for Applied Research at the National Fire Protection Association, the NFPA. She has over 20 years of experience in the fire performance of construction products, ranging from testing and research to standardization and advocacy. She was actually part of the team that developed the harmonized European fire test and classification scheme. And Birgitte was instrumental in ensuring that fire safety remained a focus in Europe. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. Everyone will be muted throughout the webinar. And as such, if you have questions for our speakers, please type them in the Q&A box in the Zoom control panel. We will address those questions after the presentation during the Q&A session. If you want to tweet, the hashtag is EUCanBeFireSafe. The webinar will also be recorded and the registrants to the webinar will be sent the direct link. Now, without further ado, I will give the floor to our first speaker, Dr. Laurie Moore-Morel.
Good morning for us, good afternoon for you all. I'm going to take the slides here and thank you very much for your attention as we go through some of the things that we are doing in the United States for tracking fire data. I'm going to tell you about two systems that we have created, and this has been a conglomeration of research organizations from the fire service, including both the labor and management, plus our fire science and data scientists that have created these two systems. The first that I'll tell you about is called Fire Cares, and Fire Cares simply stands for Community Assessment Response Evaluation System. And the Fire Care system is based on a big data analytics premise that is much like that is used in Google, for example. Telecommunications, our healthcare, many governments, hotels, booking flights, all of those systems, big data systems where a lot of information has been compiled and then it can be mined for intelligence about fire and emergency response. So we've taken that premise and we have built that for the fire service. And with that, what are we looking to do? This is about having new opportunities. It's about having our leaders make smarter decisions because they are informed decisions. It's making sure that we can ensure firefighter and responder safety by assuring effective and efficient operations on the fire grounds. And then certainly looking at reducing death and injury as well as property loss. Because our premise, again, that we have based all of our work on are the core values of the fire department. And those are what you see on your screen now, which is everything from preparedness, which is your community risk assessments, making sure that we know hazard levels of the built environment. We know the hazard levels and the risk that are inherent to a given population. We look also at prevention very heavily. That's everything from built and automatic fire alarm systems to sprinkler systems to even smoke detectors, public education as well, with a heavy focus on emergency response. With that, looking at always making sure we are responding with quality, safe, efficient, and effective operations on the fire ground. And so with that being the driving force behind fire cares, again, the whole premise of the system is that we match what resources that are responding to a fire from the fire department to the risk environment in which they are responding. In other words, we want to make sure we're sending sufficient resources, we're deploying sufficient personnel, sufficient apparatus and equipment to handle the risk event to which they're responding. Because we know from a science base that if we match well, then we have better outcomes in firefighter injury and death, civilian injury and death, and property loss. Because those are the three outcomes for everything that we respond to. So if we match well, they're positive. If we don't match well, then we are much more likely to have bad outcomes in those three categories. And so that everything that we do, it's about looking at how we deploy to match the risk event that is occurring. So with that in fire cares, just some information about the system itself. We have over 27,000 fire departments that have a page, and I will show you what I mean by their page, but it is unique to the department and their community. We have 52,000 plus fire stations. We have geocoded 40 million calls for fire, over 90 million emergency medical calls that are in our system. So you can begin to see how we're layering data, lots and lots of data, to be able to mine it for intelligence. So 120 million parcels. So we know the parcels and we know the built environment, and I'll show you that how we're geocoding, plus we are assigning hazard levels to the built environment, to the structures on each of these parcels. And then we average over 128,000 visitors about a month. And so 2,000 of them are registered. And by that, I will show you that a lot of the information is behind login for the fire service itself. So here's a page from Fire Cares. You can certainly go to firecares.org and learn much more about the system. It is a very dynamic system. As I said, every fire department has a page. So if you search for any fire department in the US, you'll see a multitude. You can do a word search. Many pages come up with their information. You select the department that you're looking for by city, by state, and then you're able to go to their page. So as I said, every department has a page. You'll see underneath the map window, everybody has their own map. In the map, you'll see the jurisdictional border of the response zone for that department. The red dots are their fire stations and their location. In this map, you're able to zoom in and out just like we would within our Google Maps, for example. Then underneath the map, you have the community risk assessment. So we conduct this community risk assessment for fire risk, fire spread, and death and injury from those fires. We also give the departments a performance score. You'll see that just to the right of the map. And so that performance score has to do with how well they deploy resources, again, to match the fires to which they are responding. If they do that well, if we have a good match, then the other score that we calculate is called a safe grade. And it really does measure how well they deploy resources given their risk environment. And so a good match in those three outcomes that I mentioned earlier. We also have lots of data that have been compiled. We look at the fire data from every department, their census information. So all of these data are now compiled, can be mined so that we can gather additional information. We also have the parcel layer. So in the map window, you can turn on multiple geographic layers. So this is an example, and any parcel that you click on, you're going to get more information, as you see in the window, about that particular structure. So you can see this structure, we have the address, we have how many stories, how many units, how many rooms, its property value, total land value. So we have that, and then the color coding within the map, you'll see it's the green, the peach color, more of a red color. This is hazard level. So low hazard for us is more of a single family dwelling. Medium hazard would be more like strip malls, 3-story garden apartments, more multiple family use. And then of course, high hazard being high rise, hospitals, schools, and the like. So we have that information that is all compiled again in this big data system. We can then overlay those fires, the historic fires that have been geocoded. We overlay those with the parcels, and we can show a heat map of where there have been historic fires within that jurisdiction. We also have the capability to run GIS from every station, so we can look at the response capability of that fire department from its stations. 4 minutes, 6 minutes, and 8-minute capability to respond to the surrounding areas, geographically speaking. We also can load hydrants. So this is a shot within the map window of a hydrant layer, so we know how close hydrants are to each of those parcels. And then the next system that I want to tell you about is a sister project. You'll notice the light branding, which is our National Fire Operations Reporting System. As I mentioned, the compiling of data and geocoding of data, our historic data assets in the States have been about the incident of fire. And so there wasn't a lot about operations. So though we could use that to tell us where a fire had occurred, we did not have information on what firefighters did when they show up. How quickly do they engage? How quickly do they get water on fire? Do they conduct searches? This is stopping the escalation of the risk. And so we wanted to build something that could couple with fire cares to be able to do that. So Inforce is that database. Inforce connects live to the computer-aided dispatch system with our departments. It's able to withdraw data directly, so there's no firefighter data entry here. We're able to get heads-up displays. Everything is automatically geocoded. So this now gives us the opportunity to flow data straight into the fire care system without having to do all the work to geocode all the historic fires. So now we have them live. We're able to know how they respond, when they engage with their interaction on the fire ground. We're able to give every department live analytics about how busy a unit is, what type of structures they're responding to. Are they going to medical or fire calls? All of these data analytics, including breaking things down by their battalions, by their city council or their commission or their decision maker geographic jurisdiction. So you can actually speak to decision makers about what you do as a fire department within their jurisdiction. So our Inforce is able to bring those analytics to bear as well. So these two systems work together. The final thing that I'll mention to you is that Inforce also has a firefighter career diary. This is our exposure module. So it connects, and we know when firefighters are responding, we know where individual firefighters ride, and then they are able to add their exposure data. We have a huge problem with firefighter cancers and behavioral health incidents. So this exposure app gives them a career diary to track all of their information for their career. So should something bad happen to them, then we have the evidence to show what has occurred in their life. With that, I'll show you the Inforce website. So you can go to Inforce, nfors.org, and check out more about this data system as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lori, for this very impressive presentation. We will now give the floor to our next speaker, Birgit Messerschmidt, who just got the slides up. Birgit.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. I hope you all can hear me. This is an exciting day here in the United States today, midterm elections. Normally it doesn't get that much hype as it has at the moment, but we are definitely getting excited over here, and we're also getting totally fed up with it at the same time. So anyway, it's good to take our attention a little bit away from everything going on, being part of this webinar this morning. So I'm going to talk to you about the fire data analysis that we're doing here at NFPA. So I'm just going to stay strictly with the fire data analysis and not go into some of the other data analytics that we're doing, because I only have 10 minutes. So, and I also think this is probably what fits well with what some of you are looking for information. So first, a little bit about NFPA, or National Fire Protection Association. We are a global nonprofit organization established in 1896, devoted to eliminating death, injury, property, and economic loss due to fire, electrical, and related hazards. Our vision is that we are the leading global advocate for the elimination of death, injury, property, and economic loss due to fire, electrical, and related hazard. And our mission is to help save lives and reduce loss with information, knowledge, and passion. So we've just heard very good information from Lori about all the data related to the response, and actually also community risk reduction. when we're talking fire data, and I remember being part of the discussions in Europe around fire data, that we are very often thinking only about the data related to the fire itself. What got ignited? What is the ignition? What's the fire spread? What's the, what's the detection system working, suppression system, and so on. But what Laurie just talked about, the whole response and the community risk reduction work behind it as well, is equally important. We are seeing more and more, both here in North America, but also in Europe, that they're trying to save costs on the fire service. So it's extremely important to have these kind of data to show how efficient the fire service is at saving lives and saving property value, etc. So I'm going to focus my presentation on the top part here, all about the fire. So here at NFPA, in our fire analysis section, we are working with 4 different data sets called lovingly NFIRS, FES, FSI, and FIDO. And FIDO is not a dog, no. But we use all of these different data sets to make our analysis of the fire problem here in the US. So a little bit about what are each of these data sets then. So the first one is NFIRS, or as it's called, is the National Fire Incident Reporting System. This is data that all comes from the US Fire Administration. The data are collected by 70 to 80% of US fire departments and provided to the US Fire Administration, who then disseminate this information. Everybody can get the data set from on NFIRS. You just have to be able to read the CD-ROM that they send you. And it's a lot of data. This is focused on emergency incidents, injuries, fatalities, and equipment involved as well. But it also gives really, really good information, that's put in about where's the fire started, how many people were injured, fatalities, etc. The other data sets that are unique here to NFPA that we are using, the first one is called the Fire Experience Survey. So this is a survey we send out every year to almost all 30,000 fire departments here in the US. And it's focused mostly on the incidents and activities. So it's literally, we ask a lot of detailed questions about the fires that they've had over the years. The other one we have is called the Fire Service Inventory. This is every 3 years, we send a questionnaire out to the US fire departments focused on what equipment they have, the amount of personnel they have, the size of the community that they serve, etc. This so we can keep track of what is it actually that we have out in the fire service. And last but not least, FIDO, which was not a dog, but it is the Fire Incident Data Organization System. This is a system that we've had here at NFPA for more than 40 years, and where we try to collect significant fire incidents and fire of technical interest. And we actually try to look worldwide, but it is mostly US focused, but some of the big fires that are happening around the world, we also try to capture in this system. We also have all US firefighter line of duty fatalities since 1974 in this system, and almost all US civilian fatalities identified since 2006. Then we use it to really look into depth into last loss fires, so fires where we have losses of more than $10 million, and then incidents of special interest. So this is really where the NFIRS and the Fire Experience Survey data sets are much more about the overview of the fire problem. FIDO is where we want to drill into know what happened in the fires more in depth. So, just a little clarification here, because when people see our reports here from NFPA, and I remember because I used to use them a lot in my former job and read them often. So what I wasn't really that aware of is that the numbers presented in these are national estimates. Because, the reporting by fire department data in the US, it is voluntary and unfortunately incomplete. So therefore, we need a statistical method to estimate the complete set of fires from different subsets of information. So we basically take the information that we have from our fire experience surveys and the fire service inventory, and thereby provide an aggregated statistical estimate of the national number of major types of incidents, injuries, and activities. So that's why you'll see in our reports that it says the estimated number of fires in the US, etc. So with the fire experience survey estimates are then combined with the NFIRS data really and provides all this, we can go in depth and look at the specific types of fires, If you have looked at our website and seen some of our reports, it can be anything from fires in homes to fires in schools, to vehicle fires, to brush, grass, and forest fires. So here are the different types of the national estimates that we're doing. So using only our own data sets of fire experience survey and the fire service inventory, we put our big fire loss report that just came out here in October on the total number of main types of fires. Also our firefighter injury report, which just came out in October as well. And then to produce reports on fire department profiles from US and Canada. And then combining with the NFIRST, that is where we look at fires in specific occupancies, fire causes, impact of fire protection systems, etc. So if some people are a little bit data geeks, I just want to mention that, you know, NFPA and US Fire Administration, we use similar methodology when analyzing these NFIRST data, but there can be some subtle methodological, Jesus, that was difficult to say, differences that can produce varying results in any given year. In general, though, when you look at NFPA and USFA estimates over the years, they are actually highly correlated. So just to give you an example, so we take all this data and then we produce all our wonderful reports. Here are some of the few ones that has come out here in recent months. Our major piece is the fire loss in the United States, that if you haven't looked at it, I will recommend that you go and see it. It gives a really good overview of the fire problem in the US in 2017. The other one I show up there is the article in our NFPA journal on the catastrophic multiple death fires in 2017. And the last one here on the brush, grass, and forest is just an example of one of those reports that we make based on NFIRST data. So, you know, when I came here to NFPA, you know, having been a user of NFPA data for many years, you know, I thought, wow, great, they have all these great data. This is awesome. And working here and being here, I've realized, wow, there's actually quite some challenges to the data. It is not as easy as it might look. The challenges that we see is quality of data, the response rate, and that all data rely on fire department input. These are people that are already really, really busy. And now we're also asking them to do this on top. So it's really great to see what Laurie presented, where a lot of it is automatically extracted. But for the data that I've talked about, it really requires them to sit down and put in this data into the database. So what we really need, and my recommendation to when you in Europe now are looking at what can you do on collecting fire data, make sure you get good tools to capture the data, because otherwise people will not have the time to put in the information that you would like to get. And that was it for me.
Thank you so very much, both of you, Laurie and Vicky, for your presentation. We'll now go ahead and address some of the questions from the attendants. If you haven't already typed your questions, please go ahead and type them in the Q&A box. I already have a few here for Laurie. So we have Tommy, who's asking, do you see any connections about the on-the-ground dangers increasing due to different building materials? Also, what about the long-term health, such as occupational cancer for firefighters, potentially due to different materials burning? Do you recommend any specific response time from the fire station to the building? Do you stay outside any buildings due to the danger?
Okay, those are great questions. So I will just take them one at a time, straight down. Yes, the building materials, everything is changing. So as we move from legacy to more lightweight construction, we've seen that over the past years, fires burn much faster. So our response times are affected by that. When we need to arrive, all of those things. So looking at legacy construction versus the lightweight, certainly we're seeing a lot of change. We are having in the United States another push to move back to tall wood buildings. And so looking at wood, hardwood construction again. So we're going to see if these dynamics change for us again. We are dealing with all of those different types of dangers associated with the various construction materials or building materials. With the long-term health, occupational cancers, absolutely. The materials that we're burning inside structures, so it's not the structures themselves as much as it is the contents, obviously. A lot of plastics, a lot of the PCBs, anything that can become carcinogenic when it burns. Obviously, the products of combustion, the carcinogens that we're exposed to over and over. What we're dealing with in firefighter cancer is astronomical. So we have so many cases in the US. This is just like you hear it every day. And we are looking at the exposures. That's why the exposure app that I showed you is so important, because we have got to understand that these exposures, and even in their protected gear. So this doesn't mean there was a breach in their gear. It means even their gear is exposed. And as they take it off, the soot that gets on their hands, their face, their neck, these are products that they are taking into their bodies. And so that is a very real problem for us. And so we are very focused on that right now. The specific response times, we do have an industry standard. It is an NFPA standard called 1710. That is our operational standard. And we do have operational objectives, benchmarks there. I'll give you an example. First arriving engine, which is obviously water flowing engine, with 4 people in 4 minutes travel time. So from the time they are dispatched to the time they arrive, that's one of the benchmarks or the performance objectives in that standard. With a full alarm assignment, arriving within 8 minutes. And of course, that's based on hazard level. As I told you, we try to match resources deployed to risk. So if it's a low hazard, that single family dwelling type, then we want to respond with 15 firefighters minimum. These are all minimums, not max. If it's more of a medium hazard, like a strip mall, for example, or a multiple family apartment style, no more than 3 stories, then we're talking more about 27, 28 firefighters within 8 minutes. High rise, we get to 42 firefighters within 10 minutes. So these benchmarks can all be found in NFPA 1710. And then certainly your last question about staying outside the buildings. We do advocate for the 360, make sure you're assessing for the incident commander a 360 around the structure. We do cool from the outside. We always wait for what we call a 2 in, 2 out, which makes sure no 2 firefighters go in that building unless there are 2 to rescue them should something go badly. The one caveat for that is an obvious life safety. If we have someone hanging out a window, obviously we're going in to rescue, or we ladder the building, whatever it might occur. So we are very cognizant of staying inside, outside, and those are decisions made once the assessment is made on scene by an incident commander.
Thank you, Lori. We have another question from Quentin de Hulse, who's saying, has your data collection allowed to identify particular risk factors and effective prevention measures? And a second question to Lori as well, what would be needed to apply a data collection approach like fire cares in Europe?
Great questions. So yes, we have, through our data, we've written a couple of papers and we're just getting those posted up on the website, but a vulnerable population. So we have looked at the data in relation to children and elderly and looking at assuring that we know where those population demographics are and that those rescues, we're more heightened awareness of where these people live, for example. So this is one of the prevention measures or the education measures that we are getting out to firefighters so that they know within their jurisdictions. That's why in fire cares, you'll see a lot of first due, and in N4s as well. We focus a lot on the first due area around a station. So we try to assess risk, not as much on the community-wide level, but drilling down to a neighborhood. We want to make sure firefighters know their neighborhood. They know the structures, they know who lives there. And that is, it's very important for pre-planning. And so we're taking pre-planning to a whole new level. It's not just about the building anymore. It's about who is in the building. So that's one of the things that we're finding. Certainly sprinklers are a big deal for us. Sprinkled buildings, especially I told you about the tall wood buildings. We are making sure and have just passed new codes that if you're going to build a tall wood building, you must sprinkle everything, including non-livable areas. So these are things that we are watching very closely. As far as building fire cares in Europe, we would love to do that. We mentioned at the beginning that I am with the International Public Safety Data Institute. This is a brand new data institute that is again stood up by a conglomeration of our fire service organizations in the States. But we are standing it up to truly be international. So this is the first of those meetings, but we want to have meetings with your fire service leaders or whomever it might be so that we can build fire cares for you. We are building it in Canada right now, which is still North America, but it's not in the States. So we do want to build this for others. We're going to be talking with other international groups, and we would love the opportunity to work with anyone who is interested in building this in your countries.
Thank you very much, Lori. We're running quite short on time, and there are a lot of other questions. For those whose questions were not answered live, we will make sure to send them to the two speakers so that we can answer to you in writing. So I would like to very much thank you, Dr. Lori Moore-Morell and Birgit Messerschmidt, for giving us so much food for thought today. I also wanted to thank everyone who joined us for this webinar and to actually let you in on a little secret. We will continue having webinars on the topic of data collection for fire safety. And the next one, as you might already know, will be on 4th of December. We will seek to understand how sectors other than the building sectors are collecting data on fire safety. And there will be even more webinars to come in 2019, so stay tuned. We wanted to bring the fire safety community together to discuss and find solutions. And we would like all of you to take part in this discussion, because by pooling expertise, we can truly improve. In fact, we want all of you to have a say about the upcoming webinars. So please let us know if you have suggestions on topic that you wish the webinar series to cover, or if you yourself have something you want to share and would like to be a speaker for this webinar series. We're happy to hear from you. So again, thank you very much, and see you next time.